What's up, y'all? This is Reggie, aka Speeding Bullet, with my co-host B, three exclamation points, bringing you the political perspective.
Savvy enough to hear certain things and not automatically be acting.
Elon Musk kind of like snapped on Epstein.
This is like 3 more seasons of Landman right here. Just
Yeah, definitely. Where the natural resources are ransacked, and these countries are normally not better after the United States comes over there and just starts trashing their country. And always remember, if you're not political, you do not have a perspective. Now let's talk some politics.
So, Reggie, it's been a couple of weeks, man. We ain't talked, man, about what's going on in the political landscape. Let
Yeah,
you introduce us before we get to it, because I'm sure the docket is full.
definitely the docket is pretty full. But before we get started, welcome to the political perspective. I am Reggie, aka Speed and Bullet, with B three exclamation points, and always remember, if you are not political, you do not have a perspective.
Perspective.
So I mean, I got a bunch of stuff on here, but I think we might get bogged down on the very first one, which is the war in Iran. I mean, I think before the last time that we were together, I may have mentioned that we had some troop movement, some military movement to the Middle East, and those types of military warships and things of that nature normally does signal that there's going to be some type of military exercise. It happened in Venezuela. We moved a bunch of assets over there, and now moving it towards the Middle East. Now we're in full blown war with Iran that has reached really its 18th day. So the first thing I want to talk about is just like the mixed messages on the war with Iran. Obviously, Trump very early on he declared the war was complete or very complete in his word.
Won in Iran. What did you mean by that?
Oh, I think we've won. We've knocked out their Navy, their Air Force. We've knocked out their anti-aircraft. We've knocked out everything. We're roaming free. From a military standpoint, all they're doing is clogging up the strait. But from a military standpoint, they're finished.
So how much longer?
But the tensions obviously have remained high. But what's the stage that we're in now is where the oil markets are really reacting to the conflict, especially the Strait of Hormuz, which is the crucial global oil shipping lane that is on the shore of Iran. So any disruption to that strait is going to affect oil tankers going in and out of that strait. So the Trump administration has called on some of its allies and our allies throughout the world to try to help keep the strait open. I think it was a kind of like a funny moment where Trump is like, some of these tankers need to show some guts by sailing through Hormuz. And a couple of tankers did show some guts, and they were immediately fired upon by Iran. But it just lets you know that this war now is really going into the phase of economic warfare. Iran, just being a much smaller country than the United States and Israel, doesn't really have a lot of moves that it can make. So the disruption of shipping, the disruption of oil and energy in the region is really their only way of fighting back. So that's something that is going to continue to increase oil and gas prices. And if anybody's been to the pump, you already see that gas prices are already going through the roof. And there's no real hope and there's no real end in sight that I can see. I think that the reasons that we are in Iran, there's a lot of question about the motives and the reasoning and whether or not the Trump administration even understands the fight that they have really started and what is going to mean globally. So what are your thoughts so far on the war in Iran?
Um, you know, I everything you said was great. I think that on a consumer level, it's the gas prices. Like, who's really getting rich from these gas prices? Because everything is all about money all the time, right? So who's getting rich? Who is benefiting the most from these gas prices being what it was? I can't remember who it was, but I did see the politician say that, yeah, we know that prices are up, and he's mentioned something about it being last thing on their mind, or not really a concern of theirs right now. And it's like, that's tone deaf, based on where we are in the society. Also, I did want to ask you about the he was running counterterrorism, and he resigned.
His name is Joe Kent.
Joe Kent. Okay. Yes, he resigned, saying, "Yo, we invaded him on some bullshit."
Yeah, and I mean, so Joe Kent is a controversial individual, as really most Trumpers are.
Mhm.
He has a history of being extreme MAGA, so definitely a major supporter of Trump, and Trump has endorsed him. He has ran for office in Washington State and lost a couple of times, and he was appointed, the counterterrorism chief.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting is, because of his kind of like checkered history, which MAGA loves people with checkered history, right? But a part of his checkered history was having a certain viewpoint of Israel. And
Okay.
that was kind of his complaint about the war, was that this was a war that we got into because of
Because
Israel.
Israel, right?
And that's really and that really shouldn't be that controversial, because Marco Rubio said that, the initial kind of reaction to the war. Marco Rubio said that the United States got into this war because they knew that Israel was going to strike Iran, and
Hmm.
Iran was going to retaliate, and they were going to strike American assets in the Middle East. So because they figured Iran will retaliate, they might as well jump on with Israel and then just start the bombing campaign. So I mean, really, and Marco Rubio he tried to walk back those statements, and but it's hard to walk them back. I mean, they were said
Yeah.
publicly, to now turn around and say that, well, that wasn't really the reason, that there was some imminent threat. That is the catchphrase for the year, that there was an imminent threat, which an imminent,
Always an imminent threat.
yes, gives the president very kind of broad powers to be able to strike other countries
Yeah.
if it was an imminent threat. But who determines what's imminent? And what I thought about was, we bombed Iran last year, and they didn't bomb any US targets. They shot rockets at Israel. They had their, war. I think it was like a 12-day war or something like that. But they didn't shoot they didn't shoot at any American assets or any other assets belonging to any Middle Eastern countries. So there's no real reason that we had to get into the war, but we're in it now. And
Hmm.
the stage that we're at now is, so the government now has released 172 million barrels from its strategic petroleum reserve. So what the strategic petroleum reserve is, it is a stockpile of petroleum that most countries do, in case there is some type of shortage for oil in the world, because of how volatile things have always been in the Middle East.
Hmm.
So countries, they stockpile these barrels of oil, so they'll be able to function if there is some disruption. However, we tapped into our strategic reserves in 2022 because of the Ukraine Russia war. So taking Russian oil off of the global market meant that the supply was going to be less. which means that prices are going to go up. So
Yes.
putting those those additional barrels of oil into the global market is what countries will do in order to try to bring prices down. So, we tapped into it. We tapped about, half of it in 2022 to kind of bring those prices down because they were skyrocketing because of the war. And now we're doing the same thing. The only problem is we haven't really refilled our supply. So one of Trump's kind of campaign promises was to not be like Biden. Everything Biden does is wrong. So not going to be like Biden. We're going to make sure that
Yeah.
our reserves are, have been stockpiled again. So like Trump mostly does is he talks a lot, but he doesn't even really deliver on these promises. So
Yeah.
it's been a whole year and some change, and our strategic petroleum reserve is the same as it was when Trump got in office. But that just kind of speaks to the lack of planning, the lack of planning for this administration, not really understanding like what was going to be the impact. And if you look at a country like China, China actually has bolstered their strategic petroleum reserve, and they have enough for like 6 months if there's a total
Mm,
to the global market. But it
yeah.
just shows you that there's no foresight from the administration to be able to actually administer this war in a way that makes sense.
I think it's so funny how, this country will tell you to save and not live check to check, but then you find out the whole country runs check to check. Um, even with the
Real
petroleum.
quick. So what I thought is interesting is we can't find the money to solve healthcare,
Right.
but we can spend $2 billion a day on a war. And I think of Tupac when he said,
They got money for wars, but can't feed the poor.
when it comes to the war machine, the bank is unlimited. But when it comes to subsidizing healthcare,
Yeah.
it's people need to get their shit together, and we'll just watch people die. But we have money to bomb countries. It's
It's
just
always a rap lyric, right? I was listening to Kanye earlier, New Slaves, and my favorite line from the song is
Say that confuses with some bullshit.
that's so applicable to so many things living in this country. What'd you think about, I don't know if you saw it, but what'd you think about JD Vance, if you did see it, saying that, gas prices are up and he tried to throw it on Biden?
Look, gas prices are up, and we know they're up, and we know that people are hurting because of it, and we're doing everything that we can to ensure that they stay lower. I will say, the president said this, and I certainly agree with it. This is a temporary blip. Okay, what happened under the Biden administration is that gas prices were high for 4 years. Gas prices are higher right now, and frankly, they're not even as high as they were during certain parts of the Biden administration because
no, I didn't see that. Like what? Like
Okay. He was talking, he did things like, yeah, we know the American people are hurting, but the gas prices are up and they were up with Biden. And even though they're up now, they're still not as high as they were with Biden. It's like he just, throwing us off. Even that, along with them trying to blame this government shutdown on the Democrats, the airports are out of control. I've been seeing a lot of videos of the airports being crowded, and even in Philly, I'm sure maybe you've seen, they shut down some terminals and lines are out in the parking lot. I saw it today. So, it's just a blame game, and it's I know how I feel watching them try to spin things. When I say them, I'm talking about the Republican Party and people that are MAGA and far right, how they try to spin things. And I know it's just bullshit. I don't believe it. I know it's like I'm smart, I'm more savvy, and I wonder who's believing it at this point. Um, but I know somebody is, right? I know somebody is seeing that and going, yeah, that's right. Um, but I do enjoy also the people that realize or recognize that they may have not made the right choice. Like the woman in Pennsylvania at the gas station. Did you see this lady where she was being interviewed and talking about the gas prices and Trump, and she calls him a worthless piece of shit, and then says she must be an idiot for voting for him 3 times. So
Could say something to President Trump and he was going to hear you right now, what would it be?
You're a worthless pile of.
And you voted for him how many times?
3 times. That was my bad. Apparently, I'm an idiot.
It's just here's where we are.
It's definitely a bit of poetic justice when you see people really realize the impact of their decisions.
Yeah.
But what just kind of strikes me as just amazing is a lot of this stuff can easily be fact checked.
Yeah.
And I feel like, where are these people getting their information from? Because we all got the same internet. We all have the same ability to, and when people say, do your research, nobody's in the library, nobody's, nobody has access really as a general public. Nobody has access to any like classified information, something like that. We're all looking at the same information, and how either through propaganda or just misinformation that people can just make these decisions that are totally against even their own interests. It's just absolutely
It's rather insane. I think I mentioned it to you before, or maybe not, but one day I tried watching Fox News, right? I turned on Fox News. It was one of those shows. It was a couple of years ago. And if you want to believe in a thing, that shit watching it was so insane. So the host, I don't remember who the host was. It might have been Hannity. I don't know who it was. But they lay out a whole scenario that says Democrats are terrible, right? And then they cut to a clip of Joe Biden saying a sentence. And then they cut back to Hannity and he goes on the whole thing. Now, the sentence that Biden said, it's no context to it other than what Hannity set up. And you don't even know if he's telling the truth. But if you choose to believe in this one thing, you won't question it and you can easily get radicalized. It was very easy for me to see watching how if you just want to believe in this one thing and you just turn on this station, you will lose your fucking mind.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of folks out here that.
Yeah. I thought that was insane. Just anybody out there, if you just want to laugh for just, if you're sane enough to, or savvy enough to be able to recognize when you're being told some bullshit, just watch Fox News for like 30 minutes. It's like, oh, okay, you'll see.
Yeah, if you can stomach it.
Yeah, right. If you can stomach
it. The next thing I want to talk about is the Epstein case. And I think that a byproduct of the Iran war is we're no longer talking about Epstein. And whether or not, this is a convenient distraction, because when you're at war, that is what's going to be front page all the time. However, on March 6th, the FBI, they released transcripts of the woman who, before the war, was the top of every story that had accused Donald Trump of rape, and the transcripts were missing from the Epstein files. So it was released on March 6th, roughly a week into the war, and to know, to very little coverage of it, very little coverage of it, and it really makes you think that this war could really just be a distraction from the Epstein files. I mean, the Epstein files dominated the news cycle really for months. Once they started releasing the files, and they were doing data dumps every couple of days, and then the redactions and missing files and all of these things. This was top news, and now it's the war. So it makes you really think. Is there something else going on? And we all have felt like, like there could or is a distraction campaign that Trump and his folks and possibly other administrations before that, but just very specifically because we're dealing with Trump right now, that distractions can be used in order to get people not to look at some of the fuck shit that's going on.
It's like a distraction from a distraction, right? Because I thought the first distraction was like it's been a bunch of distractions actually, but ICE was a distraction, right? And now it's I don't hear shit about ICE and what the fuck they're doing. I know they made an exodus from Minnesota and largely, but now it's the war. So it's like it's something.
Yeah, we don't hear anything about ICE anymore.
Yeah,
nothing about Epstein. It's all just war driven. So just very interesting. But we'll see where these transcripts go. Reporters have been doing a great job going through these documents and pointing out some of the inconsistencies and some of the just the terrible things that are in these documents. And it's still absolutely amazing that only 2 people were arrested.
Right.
Millions and millions and millions of documents and just questionable behavior. That it doesn't look like these behaviors have really been investigated fully. But it's so much just questionable behavior, and I can't imagine that through the span of 30 years that there's only 2 people that have gotten any type of charges or went to jail. I mean, obviously Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide, but yeah, only 2 people have been prosecuted for these crimes. It's absolutely just amazing.
Terrible. Yeah.
Next thing I got, B, is Trump has said that he will not sign any laws until the SAVE Act passes. So he's put kind of like on on really the Republican Party. Obviously, no Democrats besides John Fetterman is really going to vote for this. Trump is saying that he's gonna not sign any additional bills until the SAVE Act is passed. And just for our viewers and our listeners, the SAVE Act is a bill that requires proof of citizenship to vote. But a part of the misinformation is that it is being talked about as a voter ID bill, and it's not about voter ID. It's about proof of citizenship, which is 2 totally different types of standards.
Right.
I think every state you have to have an ID. You have to have some type of ID to vote. You have to have some type of ID to vote. It's not as haphazard as the Republicans will make you believe that it is. I think that the Heritage Foundation, who are the people who wrote Project 2025, they did a study and said it was something like 60 immigrants were able to vote in the past 30 years. And this is throughout the whole country. So we're talking about local races, state races, federal, but it's been 68 and 30 years. So just not even a problem at all.
Right.
But this bill is really going to make it more difficult for people to vote. And we already know that if there are barriers to vote, people aren't going to vote.
Right.
Like they're just not. And what's crazy is the country creates barriers, because they don't want you to vote. Well, I'm not gonna say they don't want you to vote. They don't want people like us to vote.
Right.
Because their side, the Republican Party and their side, they know the mission. They know the mission. The mission is about power. So as long as my side wins, and you'll see it like there, you don't see voter registration campaigns for Republicans. You don't see, to get out the vote. You don't see that because their side already understands that this is where the game is won and lost at. Is making sure, like, on the Democrat side or the independent side, it's about really like energizing the base. You don't see any of that on the Republican side because they know the mission. Unfortunately, they know the mission, and this is collective, we just deviate from the mission all the time, and we have to reinvent and reinvigorate people to get out there and vote. So if you create these barriers, people are just not going to vote. If you're saying a person needs to produce a passport or a birth certificate in order to vote, I mean, people gonna just be like, fuck that shit. I mean,
it's only tricky
when you take away polling locations and now you got longer lines. It's another reason people like, I just got off work because I don't know why. I don't know why election day is not a holiday. Why shit should be closed. So you got people who got to still go to work. And folks like, I worked the full day and now I got to stand in line. Nah, I'm gonna go home. So the SAVE Act, it really goes beyond voter ID. It's requiring documentation that a lot of Americans just do not possess, and especially a lot of Black and brown people, don't have passports, cannot easily retrieve their birth certificate, and it just creates more barriers in a time where we should be making it easier to vote.
But for sure. I wonder if in that case, the hope is just we have enough people like that woman at the gas station who realize that this shit is a mess. And looking back on the last election where it was what I forgot the term they used, but it was like not a blue wave, but it was a mini wave, and what the midterms look like coming up in November. But stay tuned for that.
I got two more things real quick. One is kind of funny, but there was a reduction in the fee that it costs to renounce your U.S. citizenship. So the federal government is now cut the cost to renounce your U.S. citizenship by 80%. So now it's $450 if you would like to renounce your United States citizenship, which I didn't know that was a thing, but they're giving you a discount on it, 80% off for the time being. So now it's set at $450. So if anybody wants to renounce their citizenship, there you go.
That's more than what Akeem had to pay to renounce his throne in Zamunda. What the fuck?
No doubt.
Right.
Real quick, I wanted to go over some quick economic and social trackers. Inflation remains steady at 2.4%. Fixed unemployment rate stands at 7.9%, with Black people at 12.6% and rising. Gasoline prices have risen to $3.69, 24 cents up from last week. Crude oil prices are at $103 per barrel. All of these prices are of yesterday, and we have bombings today that's going to up the price even more.
I was about to say gas $3.99 like shit, but okay.
Exactly. When I put this together, before the latest round of strikes in Iran. The estimated cost of the war in Iran for the United States is $20.9 billion.
Something like.
Yeah, keep that. And the president just asked for an additional, I think, $600 billion, to keep this war going on.
On and on and on. So we know somebody's not watching the 50-cent relationship advice videos the way he's spending money. But we could go on forever with this. Reggie, closes out a political perspective because I don't want our listeners to get hopeless.
Right, too hopeless. Right. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the political perspective. Like I said, I'm Reggie, aka Speed and Bullet. That is B, 3 exclamation points. And always remember, if you're not political, you do not have a perspective.
Thank you for watching this video. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.